Alright, this is my 1968 Sears Simpson 3.5 horsepower outboard engine. Give you a little better look. I did some work on it. I got it with the boat. I put a new spark plug on it. Went to the auto shop. Just kind of took a gander, shot in the dark, and just picked up a small engine spark plug, set it inside the sleeve, and I put the gap on the engine block here and cranked it, see if there was a spark. There was a spark, so I decided to put it in. I put a fuel line, as you can see, from the fuel pump right here, and I ran it up to the carburetor, and then as you can see, that's the fuel connection for the intake that takes it into the fuel pump. That is a 5/32 fuel line.
Be very careful around that camera.
I took the cover off to take a look at the carburetor. It's an air-cooled single cylinder. This is your lean and rich, low speed, high speed, your throttle, and your choke. As you can see, the carb opening and closing. Not a whole lot of history I can find on this engine. It's a short shaft, very rare, vintage, serial number, but good luck finding a fuel connection for this. I've seen people run a fuel line from their gas tank straight to the carburetor right here. Seems to work fine that way as well. I just had picked up a fuel line connected to the fuel pump to the car. Took this 5/32 fuel line right here, ran it down to a 5/32 brass fitting nipple, screwed it into a 1/4 inch brass fitting nipple, and that runs to the gas tank. And this is part 1. I will do a part 2 series here in a moment, get it running for you. Like I said, there's not a whole lot of information I can really find on this engine other than going to Sears and picking up a catalog, which is most likely going to be a pain in the butt to get, but fairly easy to work on if you're somewhat new to outboard engines or boating. It's this case right here. It's got 2 screws up here top. Obviously I'm missing a couple. There's nothing cosmetic about the motor head here, the case. You can pull that off. The coil comes right off with that case because it sits on the inside of that case and on top of the engine head. But you pull this case off, and it makes it a lot easier to get into that carburetor. A couple screws, a couple bolts, and it's just pretty easy to come off. Same thing with that fuel pump. I think there's maybe 1 or 2 screws or bolts, and you can pull that thing off, and which I did. I cleaned that. I cleaned the carburetor. New fuel line. So there she is, and this is what the outer case looks like. As you can see, the slow speed, the start, and the fast, and your lean and rich for the low and high speed, and where your choke needs to be. So I pretty much kind of know where it needs to be as far as the choke. It's maybe a 1/4 of it open, and this needs to be maybe a couple inches from the slow in order to start up. But you know, other than that, you know, just cleaned up. And, you know, I've been told by a couple boat companies that they wouldn't waste their time to even put money into this and getting running. But I said, you know, it's a vintage motor and there's not a whole lot like it. And I decided to tear it apart, put some new parts into it, clean it up. And I'd say she probably runs pretty darn good. Part 2 coming up.